We are continuing the program, and our next discussion will feature, once again, two wonderful experts in their respective areas. Tatiana Lanshina, she's been working as a renewable energy analyst for a number of organizations for many years. So she worked in Russia, now she's also based in Germany, and she works on Central Asia and a number of other regions in the world. And she's also part of a coalition, which is called Coalition for Sustainable Development. So she engages a lot with the question of sustainable development goals and reporting on sustainable development goals, in particular, access to clean, affordable, and what other energy? There's a third. It's enough. Clean and affordable energy. Okay, that's enough. There's no third. And another guest is Polina Malysheva. Polina is an environmental and climate activist, once again, earlier based in Russia, now based in Europe. And Polina works with a number of, I would say, very famous international organizations. She can mention it in her speech. We were not allowed to mention it in the program, but she can mention it if she wants. She has numerous years of environmental and climate activism behind her. Yeah, she's the one who stormed. Okay, we will not say what did you storm. Okay, you'll mention it yourself. And the topic we're going to discuss right now is decision making in the energy process and influence and impact of various further stakeholders and actors. And so my first question will go to Tatiana, and that is, what kind of actors are taking decisions in, I would say, traditional energy systems? So who is making decision, for example, where this electricity is coming from?
Well, it is a good question what we understand under the traditional energy system. So like it was, for example, 30 years ago before the liberalization, maybe this was one of the most traditional systems. Which you can mention, and in some countries it is still very centralized, and sometimes even transmission and distribution is not unbundled from generation. And so in such cases, of course, a lot of decisions are taken by the government, the Ministry of Energy, and the corporation. Sometimes it is just one corporation for the whole country that generates electricity and transmits and distributes. And now, of course, it is not a very common case, because even most developing countries have started the liberalization process, and many of them have at least unbundled transmission and distribution from generation, and also sometimes did some effort to create competition in the generation sector. So yeah, if we have a very strong case of a traditional system, maybe like in Turkmenistan at the moment, so they still have one vertically integrated company that is responsible for everything in the power sector, then of course mostly this company decides and the Ministry of Energy, and they are strongly interrelated. But in Western countries, in recent years, the situation has been changed a lot, so to say. So they started the process of liberalization about 30 years ago, and they have already achieved a lot. So in Western countries, now there are a lot of different generators, and also they compete with each other, providing for renewable energy for those consumers that are interested in it. And they have a lot of opportunities how they can influence the energy transition. And in such a system, when there are a lot of different generators, they are of course interested to take green decisions sometimes, because yeah, they can win new customers, new companies, or new households. And what is also very important, like in Russia, for example, people could not choose the electricity distributor, so you just have one and you cannot change it. In many Western countries, like in Germany, you can change the provider of electricity. So for example, I have chosen one, and this is EVS Schenau. They produce 100% of renewable electricity, so I'm sure that I'm not paying for any electricity that is generated by fossil fuels. And it also allows me to make my decisions decision which electricity I would like to consume. And of course, for many people who live in flats and not in own houses, it is very important because in a flat you normally cannot install solar panels, for example, which is possible to do in houses. Sometimes you can install balcony solar panels, like in Germany. They are now becoming more and more popular, but there can be some limitations as well. So, for example, if you live in a flat, in a house which is protected because of its historical sense, in Germany it's called Denkmalschutz, then you may have difficulties with installing balcony solar panels. But this is also an option. So like in countries that are democratical ones, people and even households can have some options to decide.
Thank you. Now, Polina, what is the criticism of environmental and climate activists of the current energy system? Like, what are the main points you would say?
Climate movement has a lot of influence, and Olga told us about it, had a lot of influence in European Union and Green Deal, yes. We in Russia, as a climate movement, worked a lot on just educating people, because climate awareness in Russia was, I don't know, below zero. And we can quote Putin here, who said some years ago that climate change is good for Russia. We will wear less fur coats. And it was a quote from a leader. So you can imagine where we start. And the main criticism from climate movement to decision makers is that actually we are all stuck in these endless negotiations on the climate debates, but we are too modest about naming the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is fossil fuels, who are, and politicians are basically defending their interests. And this is the main factor why climate negotiations ended with such a modest result. And Greenpeace came to this COP, and I'm sure that you saw it, with a campaign which is called Make Polluters Pay. And it's, of course, it's not a one-year, campaign. It's a big project, but this principle, make polluters pay, I think is essential. And you, Angelina, know it very well, that it was not even mentioned before next year in the climate negotiations. So at least now, it's mentioned as a principle last year, and this year this fund was negotiated. But as previous reporters said, that actually the amount of money that is now in this fund is way less below the necessity and the need for climate action. So the pace of changes that we see is very slow to the scale of crisis. And I want to actually end this part with a bit of provocation that I read in actually Canadian media, Canadian Observer, which stated that climate movement is doing everything wrong right now. And I was like, okay, let's have a dialogue about that. And then the author said, like, you are stuck with in these negotiations, you know that they are not going to the right point, you know that they are slow, but you are still paying a lot of efforts and investing a lot of efforts, and Greenpeace invests a lot of efforts in COP, every COP. Why you are still doing it? And then the author said, like, what about looking at this problem but totally different? What about demanding big climate infrastructure projects with a big number of workers there and really encourage and inspire people with these solutions, something big infrastructure projects. Then, next thing is that we were talking about heat pumps. Why not to make them free for everyone? We are promoting it, it's a solution. Why not to, boost it and...
I'm sorry, what's a heat pump?
Heat pump. It's to heat your household.
Heat pumps. Yeah, sorry. Heat pumps. Mm-hmm.
Then about public transport, why not to subsidize e-bikes or all these means of transport for the city, for the cities? And in the end, the author said, but what about fossil fuel industry? Yeah, let's come aggressive and proactive against them. Let's ban the advertising. Let's make the taxes, profit taxes, for their profits, and let's actually hold them into account. I really like this provocation, so maybe you as an audience also will have an opinion. Is it doable solutions, or is it, like a provocation from a journalist? But I think that we are right in the moment of really self-reflecting what we're doing wrong and how we can do it differently. And to end up, I think that Make Polluters Pay, this campaign is a key and essential thing to really name fossil fuels and make them accountable for the profits that they are still making from climate crisis. And actually naming the enemy would be, first step to find a solution.
I like how we hear completely different statements in different panels. Like, I would just like to mention that in a previous panel, one of the speakers said that actually putting guilt and blaming and punishing really works. But that's interesting. I mean, I wonder how we'll have a discussion about it. So, Tatiana, my next question is for you. So, like, you spoke about like traditional and also like more recent energy systems, how they're changing. But what are the roles of people like us in this system? Researchers, scientists, activists, experts. Like, how do you see our role? So, what do we achieve?
No, it's a very interesting question, and the role of people and activists is actually evolving and developing. So like if a few decades ago there were very few options what you could do if you would like to consume clean energy, now in Western countries there are a lot of options. Of course, they are not always available in many developing countries, and like in Russia, for example. But even in Russia, the number of these options was also increasing in recent years. So, for example, like 3 decades ago, you maybe had only one option. You could install your solar PV panels, but the problem was that they were very, very expensive and not affordable at all. And also there was a problem how to consume energy in the hours when you do not generate electricity, like at night. Now all these things are solved, and you can switch your solar PV panels to the grid. You can sell the excess electricity that you feed into the grid, etc., etc. So actually you can use the grid as a storage. You can also install normal PV panels or balcony PV panels. The difference is that balcony PV panels, they are especially user-friendly, so you do not need a lot of installation, and you can just plug in those panels into the normal socket. So it's just to buy and to put it and to switch to your socket. Also, you have a lot of options if you, for example, do not want to finance your solar PV panels with your own money or whatever else. There are options with leasing, with different other financial solutions, with credits. If you do not have a rooftop, for example, or any place to put your solar PV panels, you can lease it. If you have a rooftop that you do not need, you can rent it out. So a lot of options, and also green tariffs, of course, which I'm using, for example, in many countries of Europe. They are available and affordable, and you just choose your provider. You check whether this company really generates 100% of green electricity, and that's it. Also, you can decide whether you want a normal car or an electric vehicle, so a lot of decisions. And I suppose that in the future it will continue to develop, and we will see a lot of new mechanisms. And I think it is very important because, well, electric sector is very special. It is very different from other energy sectors like oil sector or coal sector or gas sector, because electricity you need to consume in the moment that it is produced. There are still a lot of problems with storing electricity, especially for long time, and so it makes this good extremely complicated, and this market extremely complicated. And so when you have such a complicated market, it is of course very difficult to ensure the competition in the market. And a lot of other things, and this is why we had those vertically integrated monopolies, national monopolies or regional monopolies for many decades, just because you need to invest a lot in this system, in this technology. You need to care about a lot of technical aspects. And so for many years it was just very difficult to ensure any competition and to allow like small generators to come into the market. But now when technologies have evolved, when we have renewables that are extremely cheap, and wind and solar are the cheapest sources of electricity at the moment, and when we have storage that is also developing and becoming more and more affordable, now it is pretty easy to allow different, even small producers to come to the market and to sell their electricity. And it also supports the process of energy transition, and it also provides agency to normal people so that they could feel that they change something, that they can change at least their own consumption of energy.
Tanya, just a very quick follow-up question to you. Now, it all sounds very good. Now, where things go wrong, why don't we all globally use more renewables? I mean, we do use more renewables. Like, what are the obstacles?
You know, I'm pretty optimistic, actually.
Oh, so this is an optimistic panel.
Yeah, maybe apart from many other people who are here, but I'm pretty optimistic because last year, globally, solar and wind electricity provided for about 13.5% of the total electricity. And in many countries, like in Germany, for example, it is already about 45%. In some other European countries, the numbers are also very high. If you look at the developing world, like China, it was 16.5% last year. So the situation is not bad. And of course, we did not have these numbers like a decade ago. And a decade ago, we could not imagine that we will have 13.5% of solar and wind energy in the total electricity production globally now. And the plans are even higher. I think that many of those plans are achievable, like, for example, European plans, and China also plans to develop renewables because, well, it is responsible for most of the manufacturing of equipment for wind and solar energy, so it's really interested in economic sense. So yeah, I think we will have more and more renewables. I'm optimistic.
Wow. Now, Polina, back to you. Can you bring us a few examples from all over the world when a group of activists like Greenpeace or someone else actually made an impact on energy issues, on energy questions? Do you have any good stories to share?
Yes, there are good stories, and here I'm also optimistic. But then I will come to pessimism. You know, being Russian, you should be a pessimist a little bit, you know, deep in your heart. So the good examples are one that just came to my attention this morning from Greenpeace Africa. They were really courageous to kick out Shell from getting new license in South Africa. Now they are waiting that maybe another company will come back, which is Total, but they are ready. And not only, opposing someone, but proposing solutions. I think that they are having negotiations around divesting and investing into renewable energies. So not only kicking someone out, but also dragging their attention to positive things. Or another example comes from Ukraine, where absolutely courageous team of Greenpeace and local activists, they are right now doing a pilot project in the small town which is called Trostinets. I think they are also very much inspired by this idea of redistributed energy system, because it's, a matter of survival right now in Ukraine. And this is a small pilot that they want to replicate in it's a small city, yes, not a big one. It's chosen deliberately like this, so to duplicate and replicate it in other cities of this scale, to show that actually energy transition is demanded by people in Ukraine. And Greenpeace here is helping them to have a concept. We even published a report which was called Solar Marshall Plan for Ukraine, which is connected with the fact that the restoration of Ukraine, we all hope, will happen soon. Money from European Union will be available, and we all demand that this money will be spent on energy, on green energy transition. And while having these small pilots in Trostinets and other cities, it may show the decision makers that it's not, something idealistic, but it's really happening in this country. Then a lot of other stuff. So I started with, fossil fuel companies, so I will continue in that direction. But actually I was quite impressed by the fact that some of sports and cultural events this year, they cut collaboration with big companies. For example, there is a Brussels Run event, which happens every year. I don't know, are there big runners here? But that's if you are doing this, then you are really into this gang, and you are really doing it every year. And they quitted collaboration with Total. It was a sponsor of this event, so they quitted from this sponsorship. Another was Amsterdam Film Festival. They also quitted collaboration with, I think, KLM. That's another part of good stories. Then I'm absolutely impressed by the group which is called in Switzerland, which is called Senior Women Climate Group, and they group for climate protection, and they really achieved an important landmark in European Court of Human Rights. Now, climate protection is actually publicly, or by the court, is recognized as an essential right, which opens the door, to demand from your local governments to include it as a human rights. So all these, small stories that comes from a lot, they are very, they are very encouraging till the point that in the global negotiations, unfortunately, yes, these big decisions, and if you ask me about the big victories, I can name you, I don't know, Global Ocean Treaty, but that's not a topic of our conversation. But unfortunately in climate, yes, we are stuck. We all are, at least in NGO world, we all are looking for Belém and Brazil because of the context of the country, because the president is very interested in finding solutions for finance to restore and keep Amazon. It might be a different setup, and we might see a different outcomes of this meeting, but it might be also our, expectations could be too high for their reality. Yeah, so these small examples that they really, make me feel that yes, maybe with these small actions we can really change things and show people that it's possible, because all these steps are also done together with communities. It's not only Greenpeace or other NGOs are doing, they are done with local people, and that's super important. But at the same time, global negotiations are really, yes, not very, are adding pessimism, right, to our plate. But can I, Angelina, before you come to the next question, actually, I wanted to name, you said about good things, what happening, but can I name 2 bad things?
Yeah.
And no, actually it's one bad thing, I have one good example and one bad example. So when I'm telling like the fossil fuel companies and we need to take them into account, yes, you see me as an activist, right? But they are also not sitting still. All right, they also have their strategies to weaken the movement, and the things that we have faced with is called slap suits, and currently and it's a really life-threatening thing for Greenpeace. Slap suit is a strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's a legislation in the US. And one case was with Shell, that it's a positive one, because just recently we made a settlement with Shell, and they accused us for action in the North Sea when activists occupied their oil rig, and in the end it was a fine of 1 million billion. Now I'm lost in figures, but the amounts are really, insane. They are ridiculous for them, because it's like 1%, 0.1% of their annual profit, but for us it's an existential threat. And with the Shell, after the campaign that was supported by people and actually holding Shell into account, that it's a bullying practice, slap suit is a bullying practice to shut down NGOs. They made a settlement, and now this case is a positive one. But in the US, we are facing another case with 300 million ask for Greenpeace, which really can, end up in bankruptcy of Greenpeace in the US, and is a huge fine for the network as well. So that's just keeping in your on your radar that this practice, which is called slap suit, once it's used for Greenpeace, it's a big threat for the whole movement. And I'm really happy to see that now more and more NGOs are coming and speaking against it. But for example, I'm coming from Russia. We were used to suppression from the government, but here in the liberal world, when we're facing with similar practices, but from the corporates, this is something very worrying.
Thank you, Polina, for bringing all these cases, also the positive ones and the negative ones. So we're coming to a slow balance of optimism and pessimism. Now, Tatiana, the question for you. I think it also came up in our previous panel. So the question is about community energy generation and, for example, villages which go completely self-sufficient in terms of energy. So all that kind of experiments, or people. I don't know, I think there was this experiment in Brooklyn and somewhere else when people were generating their own renewable energy and then exchanging it through a local decentralized network. Now, where do you see all of this going? I mean, is it going to play like a larger role, or are there still small experiments just as, I don't know, pioneer examples?
Thank you for the question. We are now in the country that is very famous for green energy communities or cooperatives. and some of them are at the moment actually much larger than cooperatives, and they also participate in renewables auctions, and they also build like big solar and wind power plants, and also engage in biogas sphere. So yeah, I think that this sphere is really very developed in Europe, and especially in Germany. There is a lot to learn in other countries and in other regions of the world. But unfortunately, as far as I know, there were a number of attempts of developing renewable energy cooperatives in post-Soviet countries, and none of them was especially successful. So sometimes it is like difficult to try to introduce models from Western world to non-Western world and adapt it. Sometimes maybe it's not very adaptable, or maybe we need some other adaptations. But in any case, I'm very positive about energy cooperatives themselves. I think that this is a very good model, and it can work also as a business actually. So it depends on the goals of the people who organize it, and how those goals evolve. So sometimes people, for example, again, now this is a cooperative. It's not a company, and they started actually as activists against nuclear energy, and then they decided to create a cooperative that would be generating solar and hydro electricity, so that people would use their own local electricity and not use electricity from the grid, which maybe contains some nuclear electricity. So this was the idea originally. And then they understood that they actually have a lot of difficulties to get access to the grid, because the market was not very liberalized at the moment, and it was still in the process of liberalization. And they managed to buy out local grid. So this was like, for the first time in Germany, this was a huge achievement. And you see how it evolves. So it evolves from some grassroots initiative, just people were afraid of nuclear incident at Chernobyl, and they decided that they need to do something. Then they decided that they need to produce their own electricity. This electricity should be green, etc., etc. Now they are actually a big company that works all over Germany and also has very big projects. So yeah, this is really very interesting sometimes in Germany, that you sometimes have such inspirational examples.
Thank you for this. Now, a final question from my side to you, Polina. If we could all dream big, what kind of energy system, like globally or nationally, can you imagine? I mean, what would be a perfect system you could think of?
Well, we come from Russia. That's why immediate answer is redistributed system, because when it's concentrated, that's how Moscow controls, right, the provinces. And that's, I think, I immediately connected with the regime, authoritarian regime. So when you have power and energy in one hands, here we are, where we are, then I'm really inspired by all the examples that Tatiana gave. Community. So for me, cooperative is an example of community. You know, when we, Angelina, with you started all this climate awareness campaigns, we were asked, what is your solution? And 20 years ago, renewables in Russia was kind of, are you aliens? Like what you're talking about? Is it from a scientific movie but you see they're coming and they become real. So I think that all these technological solutions, they do exist. We just need people to, you know, think that it's really important for them, that this is the quality of life and not a big track and not, you know, all all these advantages of using fossil fuels that we have. I think we talked about it yesterday. Yes, that it's really difficult to people to step back from all these advantages. Maybe that's why in our hotel is very, very cold. I don't know, maybe they done it for the participants of this conference. I was really freezing. But, and I thought, okay, how I can, introduce it to the public. Yeah, this is your future, bright future, like when you're freezing. So that's why, yes, I think that we also need to bear in mind that people are not so advanced, and if we use sometimes too much language that we need to get rid of this, get rid of that, then we lose people on our way. And if I imagine, it would be green and just transition.
Right. Well, time for questions. Please raise up your hand.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your talk. I think it's a very important topic to also talk about, the social side and how to activate people and being active. And I like your final words, social and just energy transition. And I'm sorry to be the nerdy one in this case, but Tatiana, when you were mentioning the energy communities in the wind energy sector, I have talked to the Horizon Europe project leader, Aures 2. They were doing research on the auction systems in Europe. And actually, with respect to the law in Germany, they noticed that first of all, after the auction was introduced, the number of renewable energy communities sank drastically because, of course, they're not professional. They cannot win the auctions compared to other companies, big companies. And then Germany introduced a law that said, okay, we will give priority or easier permitting when it comes to auction to energy communities to ensure an equal playing field. But unfortunately, in this case, and I guess you were not aware of this, but it's in a few research papers. I'm doing my PhD on that, so I'm confident enough to say that it has actually been like dummy energy communities where companies approached citizens and kind of told them, we want to construct this, we need you to be part of it. Mm-hmm. But in the end, in the court, they didn't really have participation rights or anything. But this is really just a detailed question, sorry to be nerdy about that. But what is actually done in the wind energy sector is that financial compensation payments are given to municipalities now. The last recent case is Bavaria. There's already 6 or 7 states in Germany who are doing this. And there, of course, the question is, what happens to the money that the municipality gets? Like, can citizens decide what happens with it, or how is it distributed? Again, the question of social justice in the energy transition. And last point with respect to renewable energy communities, unfortunately also research shows that it's usually white, male, good educated, technical, affine people who are part of it. So there also a big question also in these conferences is how can we ensure that also vulnerable people who are not educated are part of these energy communities and profit from the energy transition. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah. I think we also had another hand there, 2 hands if I remember correctly, right? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Nice presentation from both of you. Thank you. The question I want to ask is actually directed to issue of activism and relating to green peace. I'm just so curious. I'm wondering that now you give us good success story and also what I can name bad one, but is future really gloomy in terms of recent trend in political circle? Trump coming in soon. What is going on in Russia? And to be honest with you, I have this personal belief that some country will also follow suit, to the extent that some people will come into the power that will also against climate, anything relating to climate change, anything relating to environmental protection because they want the country to be developed. For example, Nigerian first, let's say, something like that. So, but what is the futures, what do you think future holds for for your group, for example, and how can you maneuver within this complex political circle? Thank you.
Yes, so far-right reality is, you know, bumping to every door right now. And actually, years ago, we had a small group in our network, Russia, Turkey, China. Yes, you understand who they are. Now, this is a discussion for the whole network. It just shows that, yes, you are right, and it's very important issue. And it really, you know, made our network discuss the things together. Because before that, it was liberal countries where campaigning was a different story than in non-liberal countries. Now we're all communicating and all talking about the same things. We're all talking about that. It's very important not only to oppose, but to give solutions. And we really worked a lot in Russia on that, because you cannot just criticize, you need to propose something. And second, that we really need to give people hope, because yes, we're experts, you're experts, you all see the numbers, and it seems, I find myself all the time, you know, like this, in this movie, Don't Look Up, we're all, you know, people from this movie, when it's inevitable and it's coming to you, but everyone pretends that nothing is happening. And at the same time, that's our reality. And what also my observation from working for a long time in, let's say, far-right reality, was that actually people do care about nature. You just need to find the right words. Maybe if you come and talk with them about green and energy transition, it's too far from them, but just then start with the questions that they really understand. And in Russia, our entry point was recycling and plastic pollution. And when you mentioned about cooperatives, that people are not educated and they don't know what to do with them, it reminded me immediately about this story that 20 years ago, there was no recycling in Russia, and we started it with a really educating campaign. And explaining people what is actually needed from them. And when you speak with people, they do understand you. You just need to invest an effort. And they will understand what the recycle bins are, what the cooperative can look like, how it works, what are the benefits. And I think you also talk in the morning that education is super important. And we really need to invest not only campaign and campaign demands, but actually explaining what does it mean, make polluters pay, for the people and communities, how it will impact their life.
Thank you. I mean, Tatiana, if you would like to add to any of this. I think then we had a question here, right?
Yes, yeah. Thank you. I have a transversal question, a bit fueled by the 2 days discussion. Thank you so much for your presentation and sharing. Because you come from the NGO world and campaigning world, and I want to ask you really, how can you play a role in offering an idea of the horizon towards which we can evolve? And what I mean by that is that with every single energy resource, we had different kind of civilizations and societies, because I don't know, wood or coal and oil are not creating the same institutions, the same societies, the same property laws. And obviously, if we switched towards the renewable energy resources, it's going to be the opportunity to have finally decentralized non-property over the world, because nobody can own the wind or the sun. And it's not just about changing our consuming habits, right? It's really about changing our entire institutions. And so first, I imagine that we can feed the cultural need to picture that, because the oil society did not just came with technology, it also came with the idea of freedom attached to the truck, as you were mentioning, etc. And then how do we not repeat the same error of imagining a one-size-fits-all development model that has been imposed during this oil era in the world by technology-led transformations when we think about the ecological transition? I hope it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I really like your reflections. If I answer you community-based solutions, because I really like, when we also discussed in the morning this fund that COP has agreed, and now it's less that it should be. But if money goes to communities and for the climate solutions that communities are bringing, then I think this fund makes sense. That's an example, not to make the same mistake as you said. And I feel that communities have a lot of power and a lot of experience and knowledge. We just don't hear these voices. And maybe that's also a role of NGOs and journalists to amplify those voices, because solutions, they exist, but these people, these communities, they exist. They just don't, speak up or educate to speak up, or that's not on their radar. That's where we can help them.
Yeah, I would like to add a few words. I actually don't think that all renewables will be distributed in some perspective. Of course, the system is changing, and like it was very centralized, and consumers were consumers, and now they are prosumers. And now we have much more generating facilities with lower capacity. But still, there are a lot of huge projects everywhere, and even in the former Soviet Union, like for example in Kazakhstan, now gigawatt projects are discussed, and there are different opinions whether it is good or not so good. But still, I think that big renewables projects still will exist. So it is a very good question how those two concepts will coexist. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, another question here.
Thanks for the excellent panel. I had three kind of questions. First one is coal, I always try to get a sense of which one's worse, coal or uranium, which is sort of a question about restarting reactors in Germany. And then the next question is about the electricity price that happened yesterday. And I have a natural gas electrical generator in my building. And I've been trying to get solar panels and a heat pump on our roof. And it's so difficult to do this. But then suddenly I was like, oh, thank God the price of natural gas is actually cheaper than electricity at this. So it's just interesting that no one's talked about the electricity market in this conference. But also, we don't have net metering in Berlin. It's not possible to have, if you have access to an entire building where you can put solar panels, you can't sell your electricity back to the grid. So I'd love to hear about when that would be possible. And I can't get an engineer to spend any time with me for re-engineering our building's energy system. So I mean, seems like three questions, very strange collection, but I'm just a very confused person interested in the world. So thank you for your expertise.
Yeah, thank you. I'm afraid none of us is an engineer. And I'm a bit surprised that in Berlin there is no opportunity to sell excess electricity. I think there should be. That's very strange because like Germany was one of the pioneers for that.
Maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is just what I was told. It's one of the reasons why it's not. I'll do more research.
Okay.
Maybe
okay.
it concerns the multi-apartment houses, and it's about private houses and multi-apartment houses, and there's a division. Any further reactions to?
Yeah, and about nuclear, I actually did not get your question.
Comparison of coal versus uranium. I come from a place that we got rid of all of our coal usage in the 90s because we have nuclear reactors. This is in Ontario in Canada. And I just think that, I just look at Germany, I think that, you know, the solution was coal instead of, and then you still have the reactors sitting around. So it's just interesting. I'm just asking.
Yeah. Now I understood. Okay, thank you for clarification. I wouldn't say that the solution for Germany was coal. So Germany has taken a decision to get rid of coal latest by 2038, but actually it is trying to do it by 2030. A lot of things depend, of course, on the political situation, the future of energy, how this energy crisis that started 2 years ago will evolve, etc., etc. But Germany is really doing a lot to really get rid of coal generation by 2030. And the decision to get rid of nuclear was taken a long time ago, like maybe more than 10 years, and it was very complicated because like really a lot of people were against nuclear after the Chernobyl, and they were protesting like for decades, a lot of people, and politicians just realized that really people are against and they need to take into account their opinion. It was a very hard decision, but it was taken, and after the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine started, the last 3 reactors were left in the system for 3 months more. They were supposed to be closed down by the end of 2022, I suppose. Yeah, and then they were continued for 3 more months, and in April 2023 they were stopped. So now Germany has no nuclear. Actually, it was not very important for electricity prices because nuclear reactors and coal power plants, they were used, I mean, those coal power plants that were also left in the system for several months more, they were supposed to substitute some of the natural gas that was coming from Russia, and then some problems started with it after the beginning of the full-scale invasion. But actually Germany doesn't use a lot of gas to generate electricity. It uses gas mostly for industrial purposes and also for heating. And so like nuclear reactors were not saving the situation much. Coal maybe to a higher extent, but like nuclear reactors were not that important.
Okay, thank you. Unless we have any further urgent questions, I would probably suggest to wrap up this panel as well. But before we do this, taking into consideration the experience of the previous panel, where I told a joke in the end of it, I actually found another joke I wanted to share with you. And for the last 2 panels, we've been hearing a lot about climate negotiations and all this, going net zero, decreasing emissions, carbon capture, all of this. And for quite a few years, a following joke has been circulating among the climate crisis, which compares reduction of greenhouse gases to quitting drinking. And I think it's an amazing joke. And I mean, it's quite long. I'll just give you a couple of sentences from it. So it goes like this. A man from Sydney has set an ambitious target to phase out his alcohol consumption within the next 29 years as part of an impressive plan to improve his health. The program will see Greg Taylor, 73 years old, continue to drink as normal for the foreseeable future before reducing consumption in 2049, when he turns 101 years old. He has assured friends it will not affect his drinking plans in the short or medium term. Taylor said it was important not to rush the switch to non-alcoholic beverages. It's not realistic to transition to zero alcohol overnight. This requires a steady, phased approach where nothing changes for at least 2 decades. He said, adding that he may need to make additional investments in beer consumption in the short term to make sure no night out is worse off. Taylor will also be able to bring forward drinking credits earned from the days he hasn't drunk over the last 40 years, meaning the actual end for date of consumption may be 2060. To assist with the transition, Taylor has bought a second beer fridge, which he describes as the capture and storage method. Now it's time for the coffee break. Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful speakers and to you.